Good afternoon. Ah, one moment here. Oh, okay. That, that works. Okay. This is the Tuesday, January 20th, Finance and Government Operations Committee regular meeting at 2 p.m.
This is the call to order for the Tuesday, January 20th, 2026 meeting of the Finance and Government Operations Committee. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's FGOC meeting. My name is Betty Young, and I'm the chair of this committee, joined by Supervisor Ellenberg, who's co-chair of this meeting. I'm going to turn to the clerk now. Colin, will you please call roll to establish the presence of a quorum?
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg.
I'm here.
And Chairperson Young.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. And as always, the first item on the agenda is public comment. This item is reserved for persons who wish to address the committee on any matter within the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee, and that's a lot, that is not on the agenda. So members of the public who wish to address the committee on a non-agendized item should request to speak at this time by submitting a request to speak form if you are in chambers to our clerk, or by using the raise hand icon of attending virtually. So Colin, I'll turn to you, and you just take a moment and let me know how many speakers we have.
We have one speaker in the room and one speaker online.
Great. I'm going to give each speaker 2 minutes to address the committee, and the queue will close as soon as the first speaker begins speaking. We'll start with our in-person speakers first.
Jim Stallman, please approach the podium. You will have 2 minutes to speak.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm going to have you start again and reset the clock because the mic wasn't on yet. Okay, Colin? Okay, ready to go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jim Stallman. I live in Saratoga, District 5, and I've sent comments along before for the last 20 years. The county does a great job in the healthcare, the community, safeguarding our public safety and our welfare of our residents. I think they spend a lot too much and don't look at the savings that could be had by reducing the footprint of the county roads and airports operation. I've sent comments along before. My most recent was an email to Sustainability Commission suggesting that the Reed Hillview Airport be given over to San Jose because it houses the planes that were at the SJC prior. It's all theirs. The county doesn't need to be involved with that. San Martin is the airport for wildfire and sheriff ops. And then the roads, there's a whole litany of road stuff. Expressways could go back to the cities. We have a 5-jurisdiction arterial in the West Valley, De Anza corridor, which moves traffic very well, better than 85 actually. So having it under one jurisdiction doesn't make a difference. And we could have a lot of cost savings. There's a beautiful yard in Cupertino by Lawrence Expressway or West San Jose perhaps, the county has. It'd be worth tens of millions of dollars if it was sold. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Parent. You will have 2 minutes to speak.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. I don't know if you guys had seen in the Mercury News today, but the county had settled the lawsuit, one of the lawsuits that alleges that Dr. Patrick Klein molested dozens of children who were under his care and who he had seen in the county hospitals. It's just terrible that the county let the child molestation go on for so long, so many decades, and then the county never reported Dr. Klein to the medical board, which allowed him to continue molesting children in Freedom, California, of all places. And not only that, but he was never prosecuted. Why was he not prosecuted? All that happened was he was put on the Brady list. And I tell you, it's a really big problem here with our district attorney allowing children to be molested. My own kids are being molested, and DA Jeff Rosen, he's helping cover up the sexual abuse of my kids, and it's just terrible what he's doing. And these people who are sex trafficking my kids, they're also assaulting me, and now they're threatening to kill my children. And I mean, we need to investigate this. We need to bring this out in the open. Why is he being allowed to do this to other people's children? Why does he not care when children are being molested? I don't understand this. Why do you guys not care that Jeff Rosen is behaving in such an abhorrent manner? I've put a lot of this information online. If you Google DA Jeff Rosen petition sex trafficking, all those terms together within the top 3 results, you'll see what I'm talking about. I hope we can bring an investigation. Thank you so much for your time.
And that concludes our request to speak.
Thank you, Colin. We're going to move on to item 3 now, which is approve consent calendar or to make any changes to the committee's agenda today. I'll turn to Vice Chair. I don't have any changes.
I have no changes. I'm happy to move the consent calendar as published.
Great. Second.
And there are no requests to speak. And Vice Chairperson Ellenberg.
Yes.
Chairperson Young.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Fantastic. We're going to get into our regular agenda now, and that's going to be, first up, item 4, receive report from the Department of Employment and Benefits Services relating to implementation of recommendations to the management audit of the DEBS eligibility function. So as staff is making their way up, just go ahead and get settled in, introduce yourselves, and then just go into your presentation.
Good afternoon, Ilona Betskoya Givergis, Director of Department of Employment Benefits Services. I'll go to my right.
Good afternoon. My name is Camille Reddy. I'm a program coordinator with the Department of Employment and Benefits Services.
Good afternoon. My name is Aidel Villarreal, and I'm the manager for the Program and Policy Bureau at the Department of Employment and Benefits Services at SSA.
And good afternoon, Ricardo Romero Morales, Program Manager for the Language Access Unit.
We're ready if you have any questions on what we had submitted.
Oh, okay. James, your light is on. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to take this opportunity, and it's noted in the report from DEBS, but there's been some pretty significant changes over in the department that the board adopted recently and that we were able to very successfully negotiate in partnership with our labor partner, SEIU Local 521, that pretty squarely addresses the underlying situation that was described in part of the audit report around application processing. And so we're very excited about that new framework that in a lot of ways supersedes some of the more specific audit recommendations, but we will be closely tracking and monitoring disposition status and timelines, and very much look forward to the elimination of backlog and wait times in application benefits, that it's a direct result of that partnership, and that's also directly responsive to the extraordinary changes in workload that the department is going to experience as a result of HR 1, the twice annual redeterminations, and the imposition of new work rule reporting requirements, both in Medi-Cal as well as CalFresh. So a lot more to come in that vein, but really a monumental shift, many decades in the making in how the department engages in this work. And I just want to publicly extend a lot of gratitude to the leadership and entire team at DEBS, in the Social Services Agency, and the other parts of our county organization, and SEIU Local 521, who came together to recognize that there was a real need and urgency in addressing that structure and in making these changes.
Thank you, James. Susan, any questions or comments for our staff?
I don't have questions. The report was very clear, and I appreciate it.
I want to also echo the same sentiment, James, that this is a seismic shift in how we do business at DES, because the world has changed just as seismically. So I want to thank our administration, our leadership, our department staff, our eligibility workers, and our labor partners at 521 for pivoting and moving so quickly in response to the changing landscape for our most vulnerable population. As for this report, I really appreciate the detailed report on the language access recommendations. Ricardo, thank you for being here today and for working with cross-department to achieve greater language access for everyone. Based on the service call times that were shared in the report, is there a way, or maybe this isn't the right way, I would love to get your thoughts on this, to encourage staff to use the other two less utilized services for interpretation? The reason why I bring this up is that I've seen there's a consistently longer wait time for Cantonese translation, and Hannah appears to have the shortest wait time for both Cantonese and Tagalog.
In Debs, we're reminding our staff of all the vendors that are available. As a matter of fact, this week, again, we pushed out a reminder to our staff of the vendors that are available, and for them not to stick to a vendor they've called in the past that they're comfortable in, just having all the options, because at the end of the day, it's about providing services to our clients timely and not have one client wait longer because of a vendor preference by our staff. So we're working on communicating that with our staff.
Thank you for doing that, and I'll look forward to the future iterations of the report and seeing how that tracks. On the app, yeah, and I guess just prior to the seismic shift, already, I wanted to say that the application processing front, on that front, it already looks like we were heading in the right direction. So I'm really excited to see what great benefits will be coming from this new, the newest form of our partnership with our staff and our labor partners.
Absolutely, and the clients are the reason why we do the things we do under the board's leadership and guidance. Our community is first, and in Debs, we're hoping to showcase that through the numbers that you'll see.
Yeah, thank you, Ilona. And not so much for today's conversation, because I know it's supposed to be on just the status report, but something that I would love to explore in the future is that, and this may have changed already, but during my days as a program manager with the county organization, I remember that it was operationally challenging to have EWs, eligible workers in the field, away from, in the field and community spaces, or even, I know at one point I was trying to have an eligible worker stationed at the Vietnamese American Service Center. So as more need continues to grow on this front because of the changes of HR1, or the impacts of HR1, there may be more need in community spaces. I'd love to explore that and what that conversation can look like in terms of having community office hours with eligible workers and or continuation workers.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
we're open to that.
All right, I think those are it for my questions and comments.
I'm happy to move receipt of the report.
Yeah.
Did we have public comments?
There are no requests to speak? No requests to speak.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for checking for public comment. And happy to second the motion to receive report.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg.
Yes.
Chairperson Young.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is item 5, and that is to receive quarterly report from the Social Services Agency relating to the collection and reporting of programmatic and service data for the Santa Clara County's children's budget. All right, once you're settled, please introduce yourself and begin your presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Young, Vice Chair Ellenberg. I'm Heidi Emberling. I'm the Director of the Office of Children and Families Policy, and I'll move to my left.
Good afternoon, Karina Alvarez, Senior Management Analyst with OCFP.
Good afternoon, Bianca Jones, Supervising Budget Analyst in the Office of Budget and Analysis.
So we've prepared a presentation which we can walk through. We can answer any questions you may have.
We'd like to hear the presentation. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'll turn it over to my colleague Bianca from OBA to begin.
So just a background and overview. So the fiscal year 25-26 children's budget reflects the budget for children's youth-related programs as adopted on June 12th by the Board of Supervisors. This document details the resources and investments placed towards children, youth, and family services so that we have the supports needed to be safe, healthy, and successful in learning and in life. Some of the highlighted programs we featured this year included the environmental health branch, which is within public health department, as well as the probation department. Next slide. So just to provide some of a budget landscape, in 2026, even though the budget includes some spending reductions to most county departments because of the structural deficit, there was still significant investment to programs supporting these groups. So about 2.5 or 2.8, excuse me, is the growth from the prior year of overall spending in these programs. Significant investments were made to the Every Child Safe category, and some of those programs include adoption, foster care, juvenile hall, CalWorks, children's welfare, and homeless prevention. I'd note that in certain areas, such as social services, we did see significant growth in overall spending. In part, that was due to federal and state spending, but across all funding areas, we saw growth. And then I'd also add, just as it relates to HR 1, many of the provisions haven't yet taken full effect, so we haven't yet integrated all of that into this budget. But what I'll say is we, as an office, will continue to track how these things are being realized and what they materialize to in future iterations of the children's budget. Thank you.
Sorry. So at the FGOC meeting on December 21st, 2023, then President Ellenberg requested quarterly status updates on efforts to enhance the reporting of programmatic and service data for the children's budget. So in 2024-25, the project was initiated as a pilot with the Division of Equity and Social Justice to ensure that an equity lens was applied to the development of the pilot and that data collection categories were inclusive of underrepresented populations. Given DESJ's commitment to advance equity in government, the division's programming was ideal to include as part of the pilot. The following year, by this year, 25-26, OCFP expanded the programmatic information gathering countywide to all departments with programs in the children's budget to further and deeper understand county investments pertaining to children and families. And the goal with the additional programmatic data collection is to utilize the children's budget information as a resource tool of county investments for children and families that could inform policy development and program improvement and could elevate any duplication of services, identify funding gaps. Through this ongoing effort, departments will have access to additional information on current investments in terms of program types, program focus areas, populations, age groups served, and a deeper understanding of contractors across the county who support these goals. A total of 283 programs are included in the children's budget, with probation having the largest number of programs with 109, followed by public health with 25, then Office of Supportive Housing with 24, behavioral health services with 23, social services with 21, and all other departments with a combined 81 programs. One interesting finding from this pilot expansion was that departments may classify and categorize programs in a myriad of different ways. While the probation department submitted the greatest number of programs, the Social Services Agency has the largest total spending, which you can see here in the graph. So as we can see, the overall funding amount allotted per department does not necessarily align with the number of programs reported. So that's something to keep in mind. As we look ahead and plan for the coming year, we have learned a few things. We are deepening our partnership with OBA to streamline and improve the data gathering process, which includes improving the parameters for defining program to be consistently applied across departments, eliciting feedback from departments that will inform future data collection efforts, and develop a plan for population outcomes data. So this concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Heidi, Karina, and
Bianca.
Bianca. Yeah, sorry, my glitch. For the presentation and for your work on this report. I'm going to turn to Colin and see if there are any members of the public who wish to speak on this item.
We have one request to speak online.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Parent, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Yes, I believe that we are failing when it comes to equity in our spending for the children's budget. And if I could give you guys an example of what's going on, my ex-wife was letting a man rape beginning when he was 13. There had been unnecessary bathing with the children. There had been sexual contact between the children. And this affected my children severely. They stopped having friends. They became withdrawn. They became anxious all the time. And my daughters stopped being bubbly. I mean, it was just terrible what happened to my kids. And I can't get a screening for them. I mean, at the very least, they should get a screening. The law mandates they get a screening. Everybody in this room knows they should get a screening from what I've told you guys and what I've told Department of Social Services, what I told the CANC hotline. This is all because there's a conflict of interest, and that a retired judge and my former attorney, they want the sexual abuse to continue. And two people can't hijack or shouldn't be able to hijack the children's budget and prevent spending for a screening. And I don't know if you guys could address this. I mean, we need equity in our spending because no child deserves to be molested. And this isn't just happening to me, this is happening to a lot of other people. If you want names, I can give you guys names. I don't want to announce them here in a public meeting, but I can give you guys names of other people that this is happening to. And I know other people have complained about this same type of negligent behavior towards molested children. So I really hope that we can change it and then we can address this inequity in our spending. Thank you so much for your time.
And that concludes our request to speak.
Thank you, Colin. And for our public, California law prohibits the disclosure of information related to an investigation of suspected child abuse or neglect. We up here are not authorized by law to speak or respond to any specifics of any particular case, no matter how horrendous the allegations are. I encourage everyone and anyone to have 1-833-SEC-KIDS saved on their phone as the county's Child Abuse and Neglect Center reporting hotline. Again, that's 1-833-SEC-KIDS or 1-833-722-5437. The county takes all allegations seriously and will follow up on any complaint filed. Thank you. I'm going to turn to Vice Chair Ellenberg for any questions or discussion today.
Thank you very much, and thank you and the teams that may be behind you for this really good work in just continuing to advance and iterate how we use the children's budget. When I directed the creation of the county's first children's budget back in 2019, my intention was to have a tangible resource that could track investments and hold us accountable for each dollar spent on children and youth. So with gratitude back to Dr. Jeff Smith, who made that happen, it's really encouraging and fascinating to me to see how far this has come. We say that budgets are statements of values, and to the extent that that is correct, I think this document is a very strong presentation of the centrality of this county's commitment to keeping at the forefront of our policies and our funding the children and their families with the highest needs, the most vulnerabilities, and at most risk for not being safe. So I appreciate that. It also shows us through this budget that supporting children and youth is really intertwined with all aspects of county work, whether we're talking about social services, mental health, public health, justice reform, nutrition, which to the the highlights that you pointed out, Heidi, regarding the different programs. I think that really also just speaks to the wide breadth of commitment across our county. Thank you, Bianca, for pointing out that we have a 2.8 increase in the budget since last year. I know that we are continuing to optimize federal, state, and other non-county sources and trying to keep that local budget to the extent that we responsibly can, to keep that as the backfill or the backup when we don't have other resources. Really want to appreciate as well the iteration of the data collection process with departments. And since so many different programs serve children but don't only serve children, I realize that's another layer when you're trying to separate and not either over-include or unfairly exclude programs, which really is why when I saw in your learnings and next steps, a more consistent description of what a program means, I think is really essential. And it's not just essential for the children's budget, but to highlight what I know is coming at the next board meeting, a report back on the referral I did on budget transparency with Supervisor Abekoga. We are looking for more transparency on what programs are funded by Object 2, and having a consistent definition across the county, particularly for client-serving contracts for programs or services. I'm hoping that the rest of the county will be able to look to your process, those lessons learned, and help us grow from there. I know that this and previous boards have long advocated for more detailed contract information and for the inclusion of key performance metrics in our contracts. Can you? I know we aren't there yet, but I just continue to raise it, and I'm interested in knowing where you are in your thinking now around how we move from measuring what we are spending to measuring whether we are spending the right amount of money on the right programs for the outcomes we say we are trying to effectuate.
Great question, Supervisor Ellenberg. Thank you. We are looking deeply at the contract information that was collected in this year's children's budget process to try and understand that there are programs that are included but might not have a financial component to them. There are programs listed that are larger programmatic efforts, and then there are programs that have multiple contracts associated with them. So we're trying to, again, sort of tease out what's the consistent line through all the programs. How are we defining that? Are we only going to include programs that have contracts attached to them, or do we include programs that are implemented by staff, but that might not be subcontracted out? So we're looking at the inclusion of FTE as well as the inclusion of subcontracts as we think about programs and how we're defining programs. And with that in mind, then we have to look at consistency in outcomes development. So are we looking for outcomes that are already reported at the contract level, because contracts have deliverables to them, or larger programs that may have multiple contracts within them? So there's a lot of definitions that I think we need to be looking at to think through what outcomes are we looking at. Are these population level indicators in terms of food insecurity, housing insecurity? Are they more on the deliverable side for the contract work included in the program, included in the children's budget? So I think those are deep questions to consider.
That's really interesting, and I know that you're developing a plan for including population level outcomes data in the budget. I'm thinking that we're kind of in two roles. When we get state and federal funding, they clearly have accountability measures. Are they, and I'm not asking about every single one, but if you could make a general comment, are they measuring more just output? Did we spend all of these dollars, for example, in the foster care system? Did they all go accountably to fund that system, or are they looking for impact? And then in turn, when we are the ones distributing general funds where we do have flexibility, is our focus output? How many kids did we serve? How many people were hired? How many sessions were offered? Or are we able to quantify impacts on children, and what would that look like?
Those are excellent questions that we will need to research as we
Sure.
dive deeper into this. There is a clear difference between outputs, as you
Right.
say so eloquently, and outcomes. Also, are we looking at one program, one department, across departments, countywide? So I think those determinations need to be made so that we can decide. My initial guess will be that we will look at both. We want to make sure that we're implementing programs with fidelity, and that means output
Right.
measurement. And we also want to know that there's been an impact on a child's life, and that would be outcome measurements. So my guess would be that we'd be looking at both implementation with fidelity and then an outcome possibly at that population level.
Right. If we take that vision statement of every child safe, every child healthy, in learning and in life, and we flesh out what that looks like, and we know the percentage of children that are achieving whatever the milestone is now and are able to look at that year over year, I think that would be a place to start. I really appreciate that you've been presenting these quarterly. I'm going to give you all a little bit of space and relief to get more done between presentations, and would make a motion that we move to receiving these reports twice a year rather than 4 times, so that the next children's budget update could return to FGOC in August.
I am happy to second that motion.
All right. Thank you all again very much. Really, I'm very much appreciating this work and like being kept apprised of how we're doing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to you and your team, and to Bianca and your team from OBA for this report. It's a very complex project, reporting out from across the county organization, and really hyper-focusing on a population that we haven't really focused on in this way before when it comes to data and budget and how we're spending. So thank you so much, Susan, for your leadership on this. I remember I was a board aide when you brought this forth to the Board of Supervisors, and I remember thinking like, oh, why haven't we done that before? Yeah. So with full appreciation for how complex this is, and how hard it is to achieve data symmetry, because we want to make sure that's right. I think giving more space in between reports for you to do your work in between is going to be really helpful to us to be able to receive and be better partners to you. But I think I want to appreciate you and your team, and Bianca, you and your team, for providing us with the briefing, offering the board office with the briefing about the children's budget. We had a very robust discussion about what the future potentials and possibilities may be, which is exciting. Usually reports at this point in time may either become stagnant or becomes no longer needed, but what we see here in the children's budget is opportunity for even further growth and definition. So great work, and look forward to the next presentation in August. Okay, so we'll go to a vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
Yes.
and Chairperson Young.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 6. We're going to head over to Item 6 is to receive report from the Office of the County Executive relating to guaranteed basic income programs. Hi, Key.
Good
Hi,
afternoon,
Melanie.
Key Lee, Deputy County Executive. I'm here with Melanie Jimenez Perez, Program Manager 2. I'll just summarize the brief report and happy to answer any questions that you might have. Through your leadership and the rest of the board, the county has made significant investments in advancing GBI programs and GBI as an intervention for vulnerable populations in our community. This is our first quarterly report to FGOC to provide the committee with an update on our programs. As you know, the county has completed one GBI program and has 4 underway. The one of which, the earliest one will end in August 2026, and the latest one will end in September of 2028. Of the 803 participants who were enrolled in the 4 GBI programs, 757 are still participating. In addition to the county programs, our community partners, Destination Home, City of Mountain View, City of San Jose are operating 6 other GBI programs or have completed 6 other GBI programs. And then finally, at the end of the report, we outlined several steps that the county staff and our partners are taking to try to increase, expand, or continue or improve GBI programs. One, we're looking at how we could provide GBI for transition age youth who are currently participating in the child welfare system. 2, the Housing Authority is looking at how they can make direct payments to participants in a GBI intervention. And then 3rd, Office of Supportive Housing is looking at how state and federal funds could be used in a similar way. These 3, are not completely within our control. They will likely require some approval or some waivers from state or federal agencies, so those might take some time. The last item is more within our control, that we're looking at GBI programs that we've implemented, the ones locally and across the state, to see what are the most effective ways to administer GBI programs. For example, what is the most cost-efficient and effective way to just administer the payments, for example. With that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Key. I'm going to turn to Colin. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this item?
There are no requests to speak.
No request to speak. I will turn to Vice Chair Ellenberg for any comments, questions, or discussion.
Thank you so much for this report and for the work, and Melanie, to you as well. I really deeply believe in this policy. I was proud to be a founding member of Counties for Guaranteed Income. I have since David's former supervisors, Cortesi and Chavez, brought the first pilot to our county, I think in 2019, was frankly the first time I heard of guaranteed income. So I had so much to learn, and I really dove in, and I believe that the way so many generations of our social safety net programs have been implemented have been really unnecessarily restrictive, I think intentionally burdensome, with so much judgment and stigmatization attached to people who truly just need money. They are not morally deficient or different from us in any other ways, such that so many requirements are made around how money may be spent. And the goal of both Counties for Guaranteed Income and Mayors for Guaranteed Income is to gather enough pilot information from across the country, enough evaluations to really make the case at the federal level that this should be the next iteration of safety net programs. So I appreciate that we're part of that. That brings me to my questions about evaluations, because to me that is as important as getting the funds distributed. Efficiency is great. Sometimes we need to perhaps compromise on efficiency if it means deeper engagement, because it's really critical to me that we have the information through the pilot as to how people are doing, and then how they are a year and 2 years out, which I know is much more difficult. So can you talk to me, either one of you, a little bit about how we are keeping clients engaged. You mentioned a little bit of a drop-off between the original populations and where we are now, which I think is to be expected. But what do our efforts look like to keep people engaged? And can you talk a little bit more about the evaluation process?
Sure. And maybe I'll start with just give an overview of the evaluations that we have underway, and then Melanie can speak a little bit more about the process and of the evaluations, but also what we're doing to keep clients engaged. I think, Supervisor, you hit it on the head when you said that sometimes we have to compromise or sacrifice a little bit of the efficiency to ensure that the outcomes are unassailable, and that they're very clear. And so in our very first GBI pilot program, we did not have a comparison group. In these 4, we do have comparison groups, and indeed we have worked with the Public Health Department and their research and evaluation team for their science branch to really have a gold standard of a randomized controlled trial for each of these. And I think that's going to be especially important for the justice involved population and that program. But I think we'll combine all of these efforts and all of this information with the formal evaluations that are coming out from the other local pilots and the ones at the state and nationally. I think we have provided in this report, although we could provide it later, sort of when we plan to come provide the actual reports to the full board. And then with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Melanie to talk about the engagement.
Sure. So I'll start first with the process. I think because you've been with us since day one, you kind of have honed in on some of the things that have led to us evolving our model. So we're very lucky to have 2 full-time dedicated community outreach specialists, and they are that continuity over the 3 years. So they provide space here at the county building to support clients through day-to-day challenges, and when we are doing surveys, to provide technical support. This was incredibly important, especially with our justice pilot, because we had many people returning home from prison who had never used a smartphone. So we're providing that direct support to make sure that there aren't any barriers to completing our surveys, to engaging in the process for evaluation. But I think the engagement comes down to the human connection. Right. You said that we want to get the money out, but we also have heard from our participants, they want a community to support them. They know about community resources, but they need somebody who they can rely on and depend on, because unfortunately, many have seen things fall through the cracks. So we engage them by doing proactive phone calls to check in. We do workshops. We wish we could do them more, but we do them at least quarterly for each pilot, and the topics of the workshops are dictated by the participants themselves.
Are those required?
Nope.
Good.
Everything
Okay.
is optional.
Thank you.
But one of the things that is different is they start to trust us, that if they don't come to a workshop, we're still going to call them and see how they're doing. We're still going to send them a survey, and we're still going to invite them to that next workshop. So they start to realize after a while that we will be here no matter what level of participation they can do.
Great, thank you. I think in terms of timing, it would certainly make sense. It would not make sense to hear any evaluations until the programs are completed. I would want to see, and then whatever amount of time afterward, I would be interested both in qualitative and quantitative. What are the total amounts of money, to the extent that people want to share? How did they spend them? Can we get qualitative narratives from people about the difference that this money made and what they expect to happen when the last payment has been spent? I think I trust our public health people. I don't know how to do those things, but just want to make sure that we're looking really as broadly as we can to evaluate the success and to document learnings too. I don't expect that we'll get everything right for every group. What do we need to do better? You mentioned, I appreciated hearing the 3 that you mentioned that could require some state work. I want to toss out two other ideas. I know we're not adding them right now. I know we don't have funding right now. But my team learned about pilots in some other jurisdictions for women with high-risk pregnancies who are also either unstably housed or have other high-risk factors, on the premise that this cash during the pregnancy that may keep them stably housed, better fed, however they do it, may lead to better birth outcomes and reductions in time in a NICU. And I am sure we all have some sense of how extraordinarily expensive it is to keep a baby in a NICU with or without insurance. And if there are proof points from these other jurisdictions that's a reduction, to me, that's a huge cost savings and health savings if we can invest in that population, particularly given our investments already in the health system. And the other population I would be interested in seeing us expand to are older adults. Could be older adults, again, with other risk factors, leaving hospitals or socially isolated, or again, I would want to dig into that more, but it's a population that I think haven't focused on, and there, just given the sheer numbers, given the percentage of our population that is aging, I think if we know how older adults can use those additional funds beyond the Social Security or the pension or the SSI, or those who don't have it all are doing, could again be a cost savings for us. So all of that to say thank you. Thank you for believing in this work. Thank you for continuing to do it. I look forward to hearing how they go and seeing what those evaluations look like. I'm happy to move receipt of the report.
Happy to second that motion with my appreciation to Melanie, to you, Key, to you and your team on working on this and tracking. I know that I understand that congratulations may be a little premature because this is our first report and it's part of the level setting process, but early indications already proved to be very promising. Yeah.
The fact that we're doing it and investing in this, I think, is congratulatory because we can't possibly evaluate until we have put skin in the game. But you're right; it's not the final. Yes, we did it. This works. Although there is plenty of evidence across the state and country that these programs work. And I'm so sorry for interrupting.
It's okay,
Sorry,
no.
I just got carried away.
This is a good program. It's a worthy investment. To your point, Susan, about the cost benefit gains of prevention. And just also just making sure that problems don't happen in the first place, just avoiding that type of suffering that comes along with housing insecurity, food insecurity, all the different insecurities that our vulnerable populations are really all too well acquainted with. So I'm excited and eager for the future reports to come back. I have a feeling that it's going to demonstrate that this is the right direction to head into. And I know that earlier, Susan, you mentioned that we don't have money right now in the budget, so I winced a little bit because if we did, this is where I would want to further make investments and continue to do so. But I'm very heartened to see that we do have secured funding for the pilots that we have launched through 2028. A lot can happen from now until then. And again, just when we get to a point to be able to analyze the cost benefit of heading off challenges before they even exist, I think that's going to demonstrate money well spent and with higher returns. So thank you so much. Roundabout way of saying I appreciate your work and thank you for this uplifting presentation. Colin, we'll go to a vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg.
Yes.
And Chairperson Young.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And we're going to move on to item 7, last item on our regular agenda, and that is to consider recommendations relating to property tax assessment appeal administrative processing fees. Welcome back, Office of the Clerk of the Board. So as you get settled in, once you're ready, please introduce yourselves, and if there's a brief presentation, go for it, and begin whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. I am Curtis Boone, the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa Melgar, Assistant Clerk of the Board of Supervisors.
And I'm Rebecca Ross, the Program Manager for the Assessment Appeals Division of the Clerk of the Board.
Good afternoon. Daryl Ricasa, Administrative Services Manager with the Clerk of the Board.
All right, and we do have a brief presentation, and sounds like you would like us to proceed with that. So if you give me just one moment. All right. So we are here today, of course, to talk about our assessment appeals administrative processing fee proposal. Just a very quick overview for timelines. We have a regular filing period of July 2nd through September 15th. In June, property owners do receive a notice of their property's assessed value. Then they have the July 2nd through September 15th time period to file an appeal. And of course, their property taxes are due in October. This represents the majority of the assessment appeals applications that we receive each year. There are other appeals that come year-round based upon various activities and supplemental assessments and the like. Did want to highlight some of the proactive measures and avenues of relief that are available to property owners. First of these is the computer-assisted mass appraisal process. That helps the Office of the Assessor identify trends, areas that are such as tract homes and other similarly valued properties. They are able to identify changes that are happening in value to those and proactively adjust value as a batch, which means that they can easily adjust for reduction in value for those areas when appropriate. They also make comparable sales information that is used to determine the property value available to most of the property owners. That is available online. There is an informal review process by the Office of the Assessor, and that is frankly, an excellent program that they offer, which is free, is a streamlined process, and allows them to address many property owner concerns without the filing of a formal appeal. And finally, error corrections are factual mistakes regarding a property, and by law, those must be corrected without requiring an appeal to be filed. This is just a table, just kind of summarizing all of that. I think the assessor's office does good work. They do a lot of proactive work to identify areas where properties go down in value, so that does not require necessarily an appeal to be filed. There is immediate free relief available to many property owners through the informal review process. And that comparable sales information allows a property owner to have some insight into how assessments were determined. And that can be expected to eliminate some appeals that would otherwise have been filed. As you can see, most of this is free to the applicant, and most of it is proactive and not even mandated by law. So in regards to our fee proposal itself, we did break the fee proposal down into two separate categories as they are listed in the file, but in brief, the residential side includes single-family properties, condominium, townhouse, multifamily properties with 4 units or fewer, agricultural land, and vacant land. And the second category is abbreviated to commercial and business, but covers commercial, industrial, multifamily apartments with more than 4 units, and business personal property. Each appeal follows its own kind of path based upon factors like filing method, timelines, accuracy, and so on. Whether or not there are postponements, withdrawals, reinstatements, other steps, those are all different elements of the appeals process that contribute to the overall workload. We did determine in that time study that our staff spend significantly more time on the commercial and business appeals, which make up 54% of the annual filings, but 73% of the processing effort each year, compared to residential, agricultural, and vacant land appeals, which represent 46% of filings, but only 27% of effort. A lot of that is due to the frequent postponement of commercial and business appeals. Those can be postponed up to 40 times or more, which is much rarer for residential appeals. There might be a couple postponements, but many of those are resolved before they even get to a scheduled hearing. In regards to refundability, we do recommend that the fees be non-refundable for a few reasons. One, assessment appeal applications are not error corrections. We talked about that a little bit last time. Even if the appeal process results in a reduction in value, the assessment appeal application is essentially a appeal regarding a disagreement in the opinion of value. And as noted, there are requirements for error correction regardless of appeal. The purpose of the fee, of course, is to cover the cost of application processing. That cost happens regardless of the results of the appeal. And of course, were we to implement refunds, that would require additional resources to process, which would lead to increases in the administrative costs for the program. As we've talked about previously, fees must be limited to no more than the amount necessary to recover the costs of administering the program. Let's see. Okay. I did want to talk a little bit about some trends that we are seeing in regards to what we call the unintended incentivization of assessment appeals filings. We're seeing agents who are basically soliciting business from property owners to file appeals on their behalf. They use a combination of artificial intelligence and their own expertise to file assessment appeals in bulk, have advertisements lower your property by $1,150. Just follow this QR code. The residential appeals in particular, we are seeing a trend in significant increase in the number of residential appeals that are filed by agents. It is significant both in the percentage of the residential appeals filed by agents and just the total number. You can see from the chart on the screen, in 2019, about 16% of the residential appeals were filed by agents. In 2025, that is about 50%. To put that into context, the total number of appeals has also risen over that time from 1,980 residential appeals in 2019 to 3,623 residential appeals in 2025. Of those over 3,000 appeals, 1,820 were filed by agents, which leads us to believe that almost all of the increase in residential appeals filings over the last 7 years can be attributed to appeals filed by agents, which I think kind of ties back to essentially the recruitment of property owners by agents for this kind of fee collection. They don't charge a fee, they just collect based upon any sort of reduction of value provided by the county after they've contracted with the property owner. And then just a final element here that just has a little bit of an element on this. Appeals must be resolved within 2 years, as we previously discussed, or extended in writing. If an appeal exceeds the 2-year time frame without a waiver of the statute of limitations, then the applicant's stated value on their application basically gets enrolled for that year. So you could put in an appeal with $0 as your opinion of value, and if it were to exceed the statute of limitations, you would, for that 1 year, be paying property taxes on a property valued at $0, or not paying property taxes because you would have no property taxes to pay. And that is a brief summary of what we're talking about, so I am happy to answer any questions.
James, your light is on. Do you want to comment before or after public comment?
I was just going to make a quick comment on the issue that Curtis just mentioned regarding agents. I was very surprised myself when I started getting unsolicited in the mail, not just one, by the way, a pile of these forms from agents, and they come with our assessment appeals form pre-filled out with your address and everything, designating them as the agent to act on your behalf, and you just sign, return it, postage prepaid, and then they basically take over the whole process for you. So they make it very, very easy and straightforward. But in essence, it's a it's a mechanism that has taken advantage of the fact that this county is one of the counties that doesn't have an assessment appeals fee. And that huge volume increase creates on its own significant burdens that impact the system's collective ability to actually timely and meritoriously dispense with legitimate, not to say all of those are not legitimate, but with actual assessment appeals that are being brought forward by people who are acting on their own behalf or have chosen to retain an agent with some actual conscious effort. So I just wanted to comment on that piece of things because of how big the volume increase has been. And I do think that separate and apart from the cost recovery nature of the fee, that's a good policy reason why I think it's important to have a fee in place anyway. So I just want to thank the clerk staff for bringing that highlight forward along with the fee itself.
So you won't be filing an assessment appeal?
I did not turn any of those forms in, but I think I got 5 or 6 of them one year. So and they all came, kind of packaged in that way.
Thank you, James. Colin, I'm going to turn to you to see if there's any members of the public who would like to comment on this item.
There are no requests to speak.
Okay. Turn to Vice Chair Ellenberg for any comments, questions, or discussion.
No, I really appreciate the deep work that you've done on this, and I recall from our last meeting the concerns that you had about not overburdening residents and making sure that this is a fair process and one that is aligned with what other counties are doing. And frankly, I'm interested to hear whether you're ready at this time to send a recommendation to the board. My recommendation would be a positive one, that the board implement this new policy.
Yeah, spoiler alert, I am ready to send this to the board. But I do have some comments and questions for today.
Fantastic.
So thank you to the clerk of the board. I am much happier and really grateful for this much more fulsome report on the assessment appeals fee recommendations. The report gives us much more detail. And so thank you, Curtis, and to your team for the very good work. On refunds, with this information, I'm a bit more comfortable with the recommendation to not provide refunds than I was the last time that we heard the report. James, you've shared compelling reasons as to why a refund in this instance may not make sense given the administrative burden on the county to manage this program for residents and the entities that are receiving the property tax revenue. Additionally, with the information clerk of the board shared about the timely and free opportunities property owners have to meet with the assessor's office to challenge their property assessment before they receive their tax bill, seems reasonable to not offer a refund for the assessment appeals filing. Thank you for that. That said, I feel that we could do a better job on commercial property with tiered levels based on any number of factors such as employees or gross revenue. So I am going to be, it sounds like Susan, you're okay with the motion sending this to the board. Send it to the board, but with a request that the clerk of the board build out in their data system a tracking mechanism to possibly have a commercial fee set at multiple levels and a hearing fee. I know that we are limited to charging assessing fees based on the work that is conducted, that is performed. So being able to track that data will be able to give me a sense of whether we're on the right track with commercial properties. And so I'd like to have that come back next year. So give it some time for this item to move forward to the board, should the board approve this new fee schedule for it to kick into operation, and then give us the opportunity to track that data. And so I'll be adding this report back to the FGOC work plan for next year. And I think depending on what happens at the board discussion around this item, we'll set a time certain for that report back.
Can I make a suggestion
Sure.
in terms of that? I'm wondering if we could perhaps set it for a 1 year after implementation so that we have time to really get a full amount of data first.
Yeah, happy to set for 1 year full-time implementation, but I don't want to get ahead of the board and assume that they're going to vote in favor of implementation. So that's a great thought. I'm going to hang on to it, TBD after the board discussion of this item. James, it looks like you're about to lean in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, administration's happy to work with the clerk of the board to support that effort. I think if we gather the data with the right granularity, we'll be in a position to then have that kind of a fee structure, or at least some fee structure that treats commercial appeals in different categories. And it does have to be data-based, and I would concur with the clerk's suggestion that that be after we've gathered about a year's worth of data.
Yeah, that's a reasonable window of time. Happy to implement that time frame pending the board's decision on this item. And I'm going to also add that data be tracked for residential properties as well, just to make sure that we're charging residential properties the appropriate amount for the work that's being generated from their assessment appeals. So with that, do we have a formal motion on the table? Yeah? Okay, I'll make a motion to move this item forward with the committee's recommendation to the Board of Supervisors with the request for tracking data.
And I'll be happy to second it.
Oh, that wasn't very eloquent. Do you need me to reframe that or restate that? Okay, cool.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg
Yes.
and Chairperson Young.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, I think that is it for our regular agenda. Consent was already approved, so we will now adjourn this meeting. Hold on, let me make sure we announce the next meeting date. Okay, we will now adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting scheduled for Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors chambers right here at 70 West Heading Street, San Jose. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.